I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 218, Let Yourself Receive. If your husband is struggling with a pornography problem and you want some help with it and you are not finding the resources that you like, you are in the right place. My name is Jolene Wynn. I am a certified life coach. I am an active member of the LDS faith, and I am the wife of a former porn addict. And on this podcast, I am going to share with you the tools that you need in order to start your healing journey. This is where I'm going to show you how to dive deep into intentional living, how to rekindle connection with your spouse, how to manage all that emotional turmoil that you're feeling, how to break the addiction cycle that you have to your husband's addiction, and tell you all of the ways to do that and start healing. I am so glad that you're here, and I can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hello, my ladies. Happy Monday. I am very happy to be talking to you guys. I'm actually recording this a little bit early. My husband and I are going up to Delaware to visit my parents. They were just here in North Carolina, and then they took my kids back with them. So for 2 days, 2.5 days, I was completely kid free, and I did a lot of work, and it was so much fun, but it was also, I miss my kids. And I know that everybody thinks I'm crazy when I say that, but I do. I love them so much. So today is Wednesday. I'm recording this a couple days early, and my husband and I are about to go back up to Delaware to visit my parents for a few days, pick up my kids, and bring them back home. And while we're there, I'm excited about this. We're actually going to go to a Phillies game, and I'm a Phillies fan. Phillies, the Eagles, Philadelphia teams are what I grew up on. So we're going to go to a Phillies game. I am very excited. My boys have Bryce Harper jerseys, and I just bought t-shirts for my girls. And what's been fun is that this spring, my family, my little family of children and my husband have gotten into watching baseball. So my kids know all the players and they know their names and they root for them, and we watch the games together, even my 6-year-old, and it's adorable. I don't know that we ever had a family activity where everybody has enjoyed it so much. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. We're going to see a couple of my siblings, and it's just going to be so much fun. So I am recording this early, and I am extremely excited to talk to you about this topic today. It is something that came to my mind yesterday. I was on a walk and I was listening to a podcast, and I started thinking about receiving. And this has been something that I have been mentally thinking about for a couple of months. There have been so many different times in my life where I have been on the receiving end of things, or there's been something that I've wanted to receive. And the thing that's been on my mind most recently is money, because my husband stopped working, as you guys know, and I am now the sole breadwinner. So now I have been completely shifting my mindset and working on receiving, on allowing myself to receive. And I have felt this, probably the biggest struggle in my life is with physical help. I'm very physically capable. I lift weights, so I'm very strong. It's part of my identity and how I think about myself, as I'm a very physically capable person. So whenever there's been a time in my life, and I'll do an example in this later, where I've needed physical help, where I've needed to receive rather than give, it's been very difficult. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about this today and go into a little bit of why. So I want you guys to take a moment and think about what it is that you want to receive in your life right now. Do you want to receive healing? Do you want to receive help? Do you want to receive peace? What are you struggling with that you wish would go away? Basically, what do you think would solve it? What's the solution that your brain wants to offer? And here's what I want to go into first, is that often our brain will resist help and assistance. And it sounds so ridiculous, because if you imagine, but picture a child learning how to tie their shoes, okay? It is the worst for having a child to learn how to tie their shoes, because they want to do it themselves and they won't let you help them. After you show them once, they don't want you to help them. Or you have the opposite, which I've had both children. Okay, I had a daughter who taught herself how to tie her shoes when she was 2. And then I have a 7-year-old who really only wants Velcro shoes because he hates tying his shoes and wants me to do it because I'm faster and it's more efficient, right? So often we will refuse or resist help and assistance, even if it's something that we can't do on our own. And I definitely do this with God like all the time. I'm like, I've got this, Jesus, I'm good. Either that or I want him to take over. In the same way that I either have a child who says, no, I can tie my shoes all by myself, even if that's not true, or I have a child who's like, well, can you just do it for me? Okay, those are how I totally relate to that and how I talk about God. But here's what some of the reasons today, I want to go over some of the reasons why we are resisting help. And what that is really is we are resisting and not allowing ourselves to receive. Now, one of the reasons why this happens is because we feel unworthy. Okay, it might be a thought like, I should be able to do this on my own, or I'm not capable of doing this on my own, but I should be, or I'm not worthy of accepting someone else's help. And that's not usually the thought. It's not usually that clear of I'm not worthy to receive someone else's help, but maybe that's more of the feeling. We feel inadequate, right? And we don't want somebody else to know about our inadequacy. And what that really is kind of a pride in us saying, I don't want to accept help from someone else, but from a shame place of the pride where it says, I am not good enough for that thing. Okay? I'm not good enough to receive from these people. I could never ask that. Okay? When we feel unworthy of assistance, we will resist it even if it shows up at our door. In the same way that we will judge ourselves, and that will also be a way that we resist. In the same kind of thought of, I should be able to do this on my own. I actually had a client who I was talking to the other day, and she said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I did. For years, she said she worked through her husband's pornography problem by herself for 2 years. And she said, I found you and I wanted to join your program. And there were several times over several months where I would go and say, no, I'm going to join. I need help with this. And she was like, I would put in all of my credit card information and I would almost press the button to join. And then I would think, no, I can do this on my own. I should be able to do this on my own. So I'm not going to do it. And so she waited for months and months before she finally signed up. Because of this thought, she resisted help. She resisted assistance. She did not allow herself to receive it because she had judgments on herself saying, I should be able to do this by myself. And that was what was preventing her from actually receiving the help that has now enabled her to actually heal and move forward. Does this make sense? When we think something like, I should already know how to do this, or if we make it mean something about ourselves, if we do receive help, we will resist it, right? So for example, like I said, I'm very physically strong, I'm very capable. So my pride, having that attached to my identity, is something that I struggle with. So for example, the biggest example that I have of this is after I gave birth to my 5th baby. She was a C-section and I had been in the hospital for several days. I'd had preeclampsia. I'd been on magnesium for 4 days. And so it had been 24 hours past my C-section. They took the catheter out and I was like, I want to go to the bathroom. And my nurse said, I don't think that's a good idea. Let me just bring you a bedpan. And I said, no. And I was all stubborn. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I am physically capable of walking. I can walk from my bed to the bathroom. Well, it turns out that wasn't so true. Okay. And it was the most humbling experience of my life. And I didn't have to, but what I did is I humbled myself and I let go of what it meant to receive help. And it took me and a nurse and my husband and all of my humility, I know I've shared this story before, to get me from the bed to the bathroom. And once I got in the bathroom, I closed the door and I sat on the toilet and I cried. And I was like, I don't think I can get back. But that was a very humbling moment for me and an experience where I didn't have to, but I chose to allow myself to detach the meaning. When I think of myself as very physically strong and I take pride in that and I make that part of who I am, what that means is that if I accept help, if I receive assistance, if I allow myself to receive help physically, then it means that I'm weak. Does this make sense? So even though we might have some thoughts that sound really nice, and I had another client this week who had the same thought, and her thought was like, oh, I never get sick, but she made that mean that she was strong, which is a great thought. If I have a thought like, I'm very strong, and I make that mean that I'm very capable and independent, that's great. But the inverse is also true, which means that if I can't do it, then it means that I'm weak. And that's the same thing for my client. It means that if she does get sick, it means that she's weak. Does this make sense? So sometimes even those nice thoughts that we can have about ourselves, if we make them mean something, we will use them to resist receiving. I have another example for you guys. I don't remember if I shared this story, but at Thanksgiving, I threw out my back. And a couple weeks later, my husband threw out his back. And he was totally just on the floor of the closet and he could not move. And I was like, it's okay. I lift weights. I'm very strong. Like, he's a big guy. He's 6'3". He's over 200 pounds, and I won't say how much, but he's over 200 pounds and he's a big guy, but I'm very strong. And I was like, I've got you. I can help you get to the bed. And he was like, no, I can do this. So I helped him shuffle through the closet, through the bathroom, but then we still had the whole length of our bedroom, and our bedroom's pretty big. And I don't know how many feet. I couldn't tell you. I don't speak that language. So we had quite a ways to go still. And finally he was like, okay, I've done what I can do. I can't go anymore. He was like on all fours, on his hands and knees, trying to shuffle, and he couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, now will you allow me to help you? And he said, yes. And sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes we hit a brick wall. Sometimes we get ourselves to a point where we can't do it anymore, and then we'll accept help. And that's usually, again, when we have it attached to our identity, when we make it mean something if we receive. And that's what's in our way of receiving. Another thing that's in the way of us receiving is our expectations of when or how it should happen. Okay. This makes me laugh because this is exactly what my brain has been doing over the last couple of months with money. Okay. So I would like to receive help from God. Okay. And I know that he's going to take care of us, and we always have enough for our needs. Okay. We're totally fine. But one of the things that I had in my mind was like, okay, we feel really strongly that Rob should stop working, even though that makes no logical sense. And so I really feel like God is saying this is the right next step. Awesome. Well, when I think that God says this is the right next step, I also believe that then he'll take care of us. And I had a very specific idea of when and how that should happen. So my husband stopped working, and I was like, I think this means that God is going to take care of us financially, and he's just going to deposit money in our bank account. Suddenly something's going to start working. I don't know, overnight my book will sell millions of copies. I don't even know what I thought would happen. But my husband stopped working, and you guys, this is shocking. I didn't suddenly have $1 million in my bank account. What? I know. And all of a sudden I didn't actually recognize that this is what I expected until after it happened, and a couple days passed and a few weeks passed, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am becoming aware that I had a certain expectation of how and when and what it would look like for me to receive help from God. And that's often what we think. We want help. Some of us are very open to receiving help, but we have a subconscious expectation of what that should look like. For example, if you have in-laws or parents and you're like, yes, I am all for them helping, but you get so frustrated because they aren't doing it the way that you want. Maybe they aren't volunteering to babysit. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so annoying. They're not volunteering to babysit. They never watch my kids. But what if they pay for violin lessons? Or they come to every piano recital, or they're willing to drive your child to their school event, right? We sometimes have an expectation of what that help looks like. And when that expectation is not met, or that manual, if you will, then we can resist receiving help or acknowledging help in any other way. Does this make sense? So I want to offer that you guys start questioning if any of these start ringing a bell. Okay, where am I resisting receiving? Where do I have an expectation for some help to come in a certain way? Where do I judge myself and not allow help because I judge myself for taking it? Does this make sense? Where do I feel unworthy of accepting assistance? I see the unworthiness a lot in women who are hesitant to join my program. They want to, but they think, oh, it's too much money. It's not, I could never pay that much for it. And what they're really saying is I'm not worth the cost. Okay. And even though they don't say that, that's not the words that they use, But that's what they're saying, because in my program, right, what we do is we heal and we move forward, and I help them personally and individually work through everything that is keeping them stuck and keeping them in their husband's addiction, right? And so when you look at the program, it's not really about the program. The program is not the point. The point is the personal help and healing and progression that you make. So when you say no to that because of the cost, what you're saying is, I'm not worth it. Does that make sense? So that's the clearest example I see of the one where it's unworthy, but I'm sure just take a look inside and say, okay, where do I feel like I'm unworthy of receiving assistance? Another block to receiving is guilt. This one is huge, I feel like, especially with moms. Okay, there is so much mom guilt for, okay, I want to receive, if you want to receive like physical relaxation or sleep, okay? If you want to receive help in the form of sleep, and yet you judge yourself and you feel too guilty to turn on a show for your 2-year-old so that you can take a nap. Or maybe all you want is a day by yourself, but you feel so guilty that you want that day by yourself that you never actually ask anybody to watch your kids so that you can have a day by yourself. Does this make sense? Guilt is a huge thing that blocks you from receiving. If you feel guilty for even wanting it, you'll block yourself from receiving it. If you feel guilty for how much it costs, you will block yourself from even pursuing it. If you feel guilty for the time or the energy or that other people don't get it, well, other people don't get to have it. I would feel guilty if I got it. All of that is a way that you are blocking yourself from receiving things that are calling to you, things that are meant for you. And I want to offer that you take a look at that and then let all of that guilt go. Another way where we block ourselves from receiving is our judgment of others. And this can definitely come up, especially if your circumstances change. So maybe you grow up, I'm thinking of like teenagers, and when you grow up, you're going to say, I would never do that. When I become a parent, I am never going to do X, Y, and Z, right? Or when I get married, I'm not ever going to do X, Y, and Z. When you have a judgment of others, then if you find yourself in the same situation or circumstance, it's very easy to allow that judgment of others to then face inward, and you judge yourself, which blocks you from receiving help for that circumstance or situation. Does that make sense? Like maybe if someone has a hard child and you totally judge their parenting, and then you become a parent and you have a really hard child, and you're like, oh my gosh, I judged that parent so much. But any judgment, subconscious or otherwise, that you placed on that parent will then turn inward, and you will start judging yourself. And it will prevent you from actually receiving help from other people. Does that make sense? So today, ladies, I want to offer that you ask yourself, what do you want to receive? Get really specific. If you want money, let's get even more specific. How much money do you want? When do you want it to come? Why do you want it? What is it for? Same thing with weight. Do you want to lose weight? Why? How much weight do you want to lose? What time frame do you want it to happen in, and why? If you want to heal, if you want to feel more peace in your life, if you want to have more time to yourself, get really specific about what it is. What is it that you want to receive? And then start asking this question: what is blocking your reception of it? What is preventing you from receiving that thing that you want? What is getting in the way? And I promise you, ladies, that all of it is internal. Why are you resisting it? And they're probably all very responsible sounding reasons, because most of the time they are. Most of the time they're very, very responsible sounding reasons, but they're all just blocking you from receiving. And what I want to offer is that everything is available to you. You just have to be open to receiving it, and receiving it in a way that may look different than you thought. Does that make sense? Maybe receiving help is going to look completely different than you thought it would. But when you unburden yourself, when you take down all of your internal barriers and you open it up to receive it in any way that it comes, that's when everything starts to shift. Because right now it's like you have a closed door. And we want to open you up for everything good to start flowing into your life, because I promise you, it's all waiting for you. All right? I love you ladies so much, and I will see you guys on a next week on a brand new episode. So take care. All right, ladies, if you enjoyed this podcast, then I want to invite you to come join my coaching program. This is where we take everything on the podcast and we actually get to apply it in order to transform your life. And I know that that is a big promise, but it's 100% true. On the podcast, it's like learning how to ride a bike. It's like reading a book, an instruction manual via audio on how to ride a bike. And my coaching program is where you actually ride the bike. And that is what creates the transformation. This is what actually enables you to go from point A to point B, to actually create the transformation that you are seeking. If you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling like you are loving everything, but you just can't see the end from where you are now, then I want to help you. Come work with me one-on-one. I have a lifetime access program, which means it doesn't expire. You come work with me, I will help you every step of the way and work with you personally to make sure that you get where you want to go. I can't wait to see you there. Head to my website today, joleneWynn.com, and sign up.